I'd consider myself an avid peanut butter fan. My parents will buy a jar of peanut butter and it might actually expire before they use it all. I'll buy the same jar and be done with it in 2 weeks. Buying all this peanut butter over the past several years, something I've always gone back and forth on is glass versus plastic peanut butter jars. I always assumed glass packaging was better for the environment, but sometimes I wouldn't want to pay the glass premium, or I wouldn't have access to reliable glass recycling like I did plastic. Going into making this video, I knew that glass had its own sustainability issues, most notably its weight and the increased cost of transportation, as well as glass breakage leading to wasted glass and food. So I set out to answer the question once and for all. It turns out there are many articles and even whole websites dedicated to advice on which type of packaging you should buy. Generally, there's a mix of discussions about environmental sustainability and human health. Why even use packaging at all, though? Isn't it so wasteful to make something that we end up just throwing out to get the thing we really want? The evidence, however, seems to show that food packaging does help prevent food waste, another issue that we deal with. So the question becomes not why food packaging, but what type of food packaging can we use the least of to still prevent food waste and maintain some level of environmental sustainability. But what is environmentally sustainable? Well, some factors that come to mind are how toxic is the thing to the environment, land or sea? How much does it contribute to global warming? What are the impacts on human health? What resources does it use, and to what extent are they renewable? There's a lot to consider here, so to prevent our biases from overemphasizing one aspect of what encompasses environmental sustainability, the European Commission created 18 factors, updated in 2016 and known as Recipe 2016, to assess the sustainability of a product over the course of its entire lifespan, from production to wasting. I've listed them all here on the screen, and in the video linked above, I go into more detail on each of them. There's a lot to unpack here, but for now, let's skip to the good part. With that foundation set, let's take a look at a 2022 Italian study which included a life cycle analysis of beverage containers made of aluminum, glass, plastic, and cartons. A life cycle analysis is what's known as a cradle-to-grave assessment. What were the impacts of a particular product, from the resources extracted and used to make it, all the way to its final resting place, whether that be in a recycling center, landfill, or somewhere else. Shown here are the 18 environmental sustainability factors and the corresponding values for each package type. For all you data nerds out there who really want to dig into what the units used to measure these factors were, I'll link the paper in the description. Note that these numbers are not comparable between impact factors, only within impact factors. In other words, I can't say that the lower number for the human non-carcinogenic toxicity of glass makes up for the higher number in terrestrial acidity. A lot of numbers to look at here, but I've shaded it to help make sense of it all. Red shading indicates the highest number in that row and therefore the greatest level of impact for that sustainability factor. Green indicates the opposite. So numbers here are like golf. The lower the number, the better the score for the environment and our health. Here are my 4 takeaways from the data. Number 1, glass isn't looking too great in terms of sustainability. A lot of red here. And in many cases, it's over twice as large of an impact as the packaging with the lowest impact. Granted, I'm not sure what the statistical significance and the difference between these numbers is, but regardless, glass is just not looking good. Number 2, aluminum is looking relatively good here in terms of packaging source. One caveat they mentioned in the article, however, is that this is assuming a closed-loop recycling process for aluminum, a practice that might not reflect the actual state of recycling practices, depending on what city, country, region you're looking at. Number 3, aseptic cartons are interesting inclusion in this study, as I've recently started seeing these promoted in more green-associated stores. They do come with their own impacts, including the large amount of land required to grow the trees used to source these products. We'll see how these fare in the coming years as an alternative to the previous beverage container trinity. Number 4, finally, from this data, it seems plastic has a slightly larger negative environmental impact than aluminum, especially when considering marine eutrophication and leaking toxic chemicals. So why would the numbers for glass look so bad? Well, glass is touted as being infinitely recyclable, which is partially true, but that's only when looking at glass from one point in its life cycle, the end of it. When you consider the high levels of heat required to make glass, you realize the problem lies in its high levels of negative environmental impact during production. One more quick graph here. A similar 2009 US study of aluminum, glass, and PET bottle packaging produced the results shown here for energy consumption. The dotted portion of the bars represent the energy used during manufacturing and production. The black portion represents the energy used in transportation, and the white portion you see in the plastic bar represents the energy contained in the oil used for the actual making of the bottle. The thing to note here is the high energy cost of production as compared to the somewhat negligible transportation costs. And herein lies the issue with glass. While it seems more natural than other packaging containers, the high cost of its production, which we often don't think about, is what leads to its downfall as a sustainable packaging container. This went against my preconceived notion that the major issue with glass was its weight and the increased transportation costs associated with that, which coincides with the general preconceived notion that glass, as a more natural packaging source, is better for the environment. When looking at the energy required to make glass bottles, it seems this is just not the case. And despite the fact that it's praised for its lack of harmful chemicals, the resources used to make glass, most notably sand, make it far from a product which has nature's best interest in mind. Whether we're buying glass, plastic, or even carton packaging, however, we're still dealing with waste being an endpoint of our actions. Some of that waste may be able to be recycled, but unfortunately, recycling is not a full participation activity. While we can come up with ways to make our waste more recyclable and reusable, I think the mindset of the highest R, reduction, is what we can do as individuals fighting a surplus waste issue. In other words, instead of having to buy peanut butter containers that are wasted every time we finish enjoying their delicious nuttiness, how can we reduce this waste to zero? Already there are some stores that offer a zero waste system, allowing you to bring in refillable containers to package your food. Right now, these options are not widely available, and until the time comes that they are, I'm still left with the question, glass or plastic peanut butter jars. From the evidence I've gathered here today, I'll be making the transition back to plastic peanut butter jars. With a better understanding of the life cycle of these containers, plastic ones, at least for now, seem to have a lower overall impact on the environment than glass. It's imperative, though, that if we're left with these limited packaging options to choose from, we still make the best of it. Ensuring that all our plastic jars are being recycled is an important part of this, which takes not only an understanding and promotion of recycling practices among individuals, but also calls for operable recycling facilities within our communities, so that when we throw our jar in the bin, there's a facility on the opposite end preventing this material from ending up in a landfill or in our oceans. So what are your thoughts when it comes to peanut butter containers? Do you prefer glass or plastic? What am I wrong about? Let me know in the comments.